Hello and welcome to the newest episode of the New Year 6 podcast. Today I'll be continuing my week 3 prediction game previews. Just moving along with week 3. Today we'll be covering Minnesota versus North Carolina, one of the last out-of-conference matchups for both of these teams. Minnesota about to head into the rest of their Big Ten play. North Carolina heading over to ACC play after this. But a good way to add to the week 3 hype right now. So if you haven't watched these videos before, just going to go team by team, point out keys to the game, what's working, what's not, all that fun stuff, and then at the end do a score prediction. So with that in mind, I'll start off with Minnesota, being that they are the away team, and one of the things I'm looking at on that front is the fact that I'm very interested about the linebacker room. So there's a lot of injuries up there. The main one being Cody Lindenberg. So a starting linebacker who may play, may not play. He hasn't played the first 2 games of the season. May get a chance today or this week, but ultimately that linebacker room is potentially very thin without his presence, without some of the other guys they've got there. Derek LeCaptain is a nice depth piece who's been battling an injury. So I'm very curious to see what that linebacker room looks like if those types of guys don't play. Not necessarily a player like Devin Williams or Maverick Baranowski, but some of the other players that they run with. This is a 4-3 defense, so there's quite a few linebackers in the gut, in the middle there. But guys like Chris Collins, Ryan Seelig, Joey Gerlach, I'd like to see what happens if they rotate through, whether it be by necessity or by virtue of by need. So whether they need to step in or whether they just rotate in because they can, I want to see what either option looks like. So if that ends up being the case, then I'm very curious to see what this Minnesota linebacker room looks like as a result of that. Other than that, looking at what Minnesota has done well over the course of the season, I know it's been a smaller sample size, but bear with me. This Minnesota team is very disciplined. They are the number 3 team in penalties in all of college football. Their line is together. They're kind of known for being an old school Big Ten team. Run the ball, big O-line, all that fun stuff, good defense. And the penalties are living up to the nature of that. So if Minnesota is going to go on the road to North Carolina and snag a win, the linebacker room is, or not the linebacker room, the linebacker room is going to be important. But continuing the consistent stream of little to no penalties, not beating yourselves, because North Carolina has a prolific team this year. This is one of the better teams in the ACC. And it's at home for them. So if just dials in, no holds, no false starts, no PI, anything like that, anything that's going to make this harder for them to win, then Minnesota's going to have a chance. And Minnesota is very good at that already. So if that's going to be the case, Minnesota will be in this and they will have a chance to win. Outside of that, where I'd like to see Minnesota get a little bit better at, the offense as a whole, but really the passing game has not been good. Ultimately, it's a run first. It's a run first offense. We kind of know that that's going to be the case, but we want to see a little bit more out of Ethan Kaliakmanis. I'm going to try to say that that's the right name. I lived in a Greek neighborhood long enough; I should be able to hit it, but. I want to see more consistent quarterback play, better play from the receivers, everything like that. North Carolina is going to know that you just have to load the box on them. North Carolina knows just load 7. They're going to run up the gut to the side, and then maybe a pass works. So if North Carolina knows what's going to happen, Minnesota needs to deviate. Minnesota needs to get around that because right now it's not going to work as they intend it to. They can't rely exclusively on the run game like they may have in the past. Right now, they got to mix it up somehow. I don't know how they're going to do it. I don't know what kind of trick plays they got up their sleeves to make it happen. But Minnesota needs to establish a passing game of some sort against this North Carolina team. It's a passing defense that for North Carolina that, quite frankly, is not good. So this could be the game to open up the playbook a little bit. It's a run defense for North Carolina that is decent. We'll get to all that in a little bit, but if Minnesota is going to win, they're going to have to throw the ball more than probably they'd like to. They got to take advantage of what opportunities North Carolina gives them, and the DBs will give up those opportunities for Minnesota. So if the linebacker depth rises to the top, if Minnesota stays disciplined and they open up the passing game, as much as they don't necessarily want to, Minnesota is going to steal an L from North Carolina. They're going to steal a W from North Carolina. So with all being said, let's flip it over to the North Carolina side. Now, North Carolina, generally speaking, quite more healthier. Not quite as beat up and banged up by this point of the year as Minnesota is. The main question I've got is I want to see what's going on with British Brooks at running back. So didn't play last game. Up in the air for this game. The number one back on this. North Carolina team. It's a North Carolina team that obviously is very pass heavy, but don't discount the run game. As of right now, actually, I know we think of Drake Maye as that prolific passer for North Carolina. They've been a run-first team, and British Brooks has been a strong contributor to that. I know he got banged up against South Carolina, but the reality is British Brooks is very, very important to this North Carolina team. If he doesn't play, I want to see what happens to the depth pieces there. How does a guy like Omarion Hampton rise to the occasion? Maybe you go down to Caleb Hood. These are guys that have experience. These are guys that have played, and I'm very interested to see what happens if Brooks goes. Then I'm sure he's going to be a little ginger. I'm sure he's going to be a little hurt and worn down. You're still going to need that depth there just in case. So I'm very curious to see what happens with British Brooks as well as the overall running back depth for North Carolina in this game against Minnesota. And it's a Minnesota game that, generally speaking, the rushing defense for Minnesota is below average from what we've seen. So, it could be an opportunity for North Carolina to exploit that weaker than average running defense by opening up some plays for that running back depth. In terms of what North Carolina has done well so far this year, there's quite a few options. Generally speaking, they've looked good for the most part, but North Carolina crushes it on third down offense. They're top 5 in the country right now, and I'm very interested to see how they're going to continue to perform on third down offense. They're going to go up against a Minnesota defense that's average on third down. So as far as I can tell, this is on the back of Drake Maye. This is on the back of the running backs, opening up the field and opening up the playbook. As far as I'm concerned, North Carolina can get a first down from 3rd and 2 or 3rd and 12. It doesn't matter in my eyes. And I don't think it really matters in theirs too. But if North Carolina slows down on third down and gives the ball over to Minnesota, that could create problems for them. So if North Carolina is going to win, they need to continue to build that momentum on third down. The defense of Minnesota is going to be demoralized and tired as a result of it. And it all comes together in a big way for North Carolina. If you can consistently go, 3rd and 4 first down, 3rd and 3 first down, 3rd and 6 first down, the defense is gonna be like, all right, enough already. Right? We get it. Just score, and you will. The points will come if you can win the game on third down. In terms of what North Carolina needs to do better in, again, it's the same thing that it's the mirror of what Minnesota has struggled in. Minnesota has struggled to throw the ball. North Carolina has struggled to defend the throw. So one of those teams is going to come out ahead. Either Minnesota is going to establish a passing game against North Carolina and light up these DBs, or these DBs are going to lock down the receivers and quarterback of Minnesota, and North Carolina is going to run away with it. One of those two things is going to happen, just by virtue of they can't both end this week 120th in their category. One of them is going to improve based on the fact that they're playing, dare I say, inferior competition. Minnesota's passing game is nothing to write home about. North Carolina's pass defense is nothing to write home about. One of them will look good as a result of that. It's the opposite of an unstoppable force meets an immovable object. It's a a stoppable force meets a movable object. Both are kind of just, blasé and there and not really interested in rising to the top. And we'll see how that looks, but eventually speaking, one of them is going to be the difference maker for their team winning. So if North Carolina establishes that running back depth, they continue to do well on third down offense, and they can establish their DBs after 2 weeks of really not doing that, then North Carolina is going to win a big one at home. So with that in mind, it is time to make my official prediction. North Carolina is the favorite. They are favored by 7.5, and the total is 50. I'm going to take North Carolina to win. I'm going to take Minnesota to cover, and I'm going to take the under on 50 here. Score prediction is going to be low. Technically speaking, my score prediction has it as a tie based on what I've modeled here. It's 22-22. So let's say 22-21, a 1-point win for whoever wins it. In this case, that would be North Carolina. But I think the Minnesota defense is quite good so far from what we've seen. The North Carolina offense has looked good in their own right, but generally speaking, we'll kind of see which one ekes out more this week. I'm very curious to see. It's an interesting matchup between a Minnesota team that doesn't score often but doesn't let up a lot of scores versus a North Carolina team that can score at will, but the defense has been a liability. One of them is going to pull out. That's why it's such a small margin for me, because eventually one of those teams is going to squeak away with the win. But I think they're very good mirrors of each other as programs. But I'll take North Carolina. It's going to be a close one. It's going to be a good one. Definitely the game of the 3:30 slot, and a fun one from start to finish. But that wraps up this video for the New Year 6 podcast. What are your thoughts on this game? What are your keys to the game? What's your score prediction? Who you got, Minnesota, North Carolina? Let us know in the comments below. But other than that, thank you for your time. One final preview video for this week. I'm going to wrap up with Michigan State, Washington. That'll be released sometime this week. But yeah, other than that, thank you for your time. Can't wait for week 3 to kick off in a few days. And, some more exciting football ahead. So, we'll catch up soon.